Joining us now is the Commonwealth Secretary of Transportation, Aubrey Layne, who, by the way, is a Republican in a Democratic administration. Done a great job. Secretary Layne, good to have you with us.
John, good morning. Glad to be here.
Now, a very unique situation because you're Republican and you're working for, you're basically in the McAuliffe administration, Democratic administration. And you were telling me earlier when you came in about when you took the position offered by the governor, you thought, this has got to be a bipartisan effort in order to get things done. You couldn't get sucked into some of the politics. But, of course, we have a governor that's, he's a good friend of mine. He comes on my show every week, but he's very political. You've been able to navigate a lot of things through. Let's just start with Hampton Roads, okay? Right. And here's my position, then I want to get your feedback. We had the Great Transportation Compromise of 2013, right, which added money into the fund. And I was one of the only Republicans that were on the air that was enthusiastic supporter of that because you need roads. I had Admiral Halsey on my show during that debate who said to me, we played this tape over and over, who said to me, John, here's the deal. If I can't get roads and an infrastructure, a transportation infrastructure to move my troops, I simply can't put any more carriers at your base. I just can't do it. I got to go to Jacksonville. Nothing personal, but I got to get roads. And so, but the problem with this is it was sold as the panacea, and it was only a fraction, though, of what we needed. So, is that not true? It was not the end-all, be-all to solve the problems because our infrastructure had been so far behind with investment. That was only a piece of what we needed.
Yeah, that's right, John. It was over 30 years almost since the last time the state had put additional monies into infrastructure, transportation infrastructure. And also, as you know, the federal government hadn't raised the gas tax since the early 90s. So it lost a lot of borrowing power. You're right, in 2013, the last year of Governor McDonald, new monies were put in. And, of course, the issue with that was we were going to index the price of gasoline by switching from a cents per gallon to a wholesale percentage per gallon. And the theory is, as the price of gasoline went up, we'd reap all these additional benefits. Well, as we all know, the price of gasoline went down and there was a floor, so we got a little bit more money, but not what we were envisioning. But the two areas that did get additional monies were Hampton Roads in Northern Virginia, because there were additional taxes levied in those regions for infrastructure for our transportation needs. In fact, one of the first pieces of legislation we put in coming in 2014 was legislation for the Hampton Roads Transportation Accountability Commission, the commission that is where these new funds in Hampton Roads are housed and they're put on projects. So that has really been the big news in Hampton Roads. That has allowed us to move forward all these things for many years. You're right. We heard the same thing from the military. It was no longer just a quality of life. It was a mission readiness. They had to have additional transportation movements. So with those monies, working with the state, you started with the widening of 64 on the peninsula. We've got the high-rise bridge coming on, the Interstate 64 and 264 interchange in Norfolk and Virginia Beach. And now we even have a constrained plan to do the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. So at the very heart of that were the new monies coming in at the state, but primarily that really made that go were the new monies in Hampton Roads.
Mr. Secretary, let's stay in the Hampton Roads region for a second. Let's get to tolls.
Yes.
And let's get to the tolling going into Portsmouth, which a lot of people still upset with. This is exclusionary of the Jordan Bridge, which I think anybody understands that's a convenience. But getting in and out of Portsmouth, big deal. A lot of people have said about the tolls and the deal that was made with East River Crossing, which really looks, it's like if Trump ever saw this deal, I think he would lose his hair, would go on fire. It was so bad.
Yeah,
it was really a bad deal.
It was a bad deal. Project, good. Deal, poor. And in fact, it's the first time, and that's why, John, policy matters. It's the first time in the state of Virginia that we taxed or told our citizens before we even had the infrastructure in place. That's one of the first things we did when we came into office. We bought down those tolls. And then on top of that, the concessionaire gets an automatic raise each year, regardless of whether or not they're meeting their not only their return on their monies, but just their revenues. They get that. And of course, one of the most egregious parts was that if we build another water crossing in Hampton Roads, which we are, they're going to have a compensation claim. So this is one of the things when we came in, we looked at, we bought down the tolls. Complicating all this has to be the fact that the concessionaire themselves did a poor job beginning in terms of billing. So no wonder Hampton Roads was upset with this, and it caused us some issues in having to move forward with other assets because we're going to have tolling in Hampton Roads. But we passed legislation last year that said only tolls can be now on new capacity. You can't toll an existing road. You have to have a free option on that road. So that's with everything we do in the future now. There will always be a free option on there. The other thing that this was a fixed toll. Well, one of the things that's been more successful for us around the state is have a dynamically priced toll where the consumer makes a choice. We call them hot lanes. We've found that opens up about, in Northern Virginia, 20% more capacity in the free lanes as people opt out. So it's not just about the high-end drivers. It's about capacity on the free lanes also. We're going to be starting that sometime this year in Hampton Roads. The HOV between the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, Willoughby Spit area, and Norfolk, Virginia.
I love that plan because that is pure urban economics.
That's right.
I mean, that economics. You have the choice if you want to save the time and get out of the traffic and you want to pay the toll, you pay it and you drive in the HOV. If not, your choice is you drive the other lane.
Yeah, and if you want to put another person in your car, you're still free no matter what.
Right.
You want to take another transit, you're free.
Right.
So this is about, if you just want to be in your own car, fine. We've got to find a way to use our infrastructure more efficiently. Just pay.
But I love that because if you don't want to pay it, you don't have to pay it, right? You have the choice to be made. And I think that's really what the future is. And that is just pure economics of choice 101. Now, when I go to D.C. from Hampton Roads, I'll pick it up in, I guess, Fredericksburg, right?
Yeah, just north, although we're going to be
just north of Fredericksburg,
down
right?
south even. That's
and
right.
I don't know, it's, I guess, and I'll drive the whole thing right to the end. This is about $15, I think, if you go the whole way, isn't it?
Yes, it is, but it's your choice.
But it's my choice.
That's right.
And so I can sometimes save an hour or 45 minutes. And so to me, that's worth it if I got something to do. Now, there's other times where, I'm going up at 2 a.m. There's nobody, or 3 a.m. sometimes. There's nobody there. I don't have to pay the $15 because there's nobody there anyway.
Yeah, it's really counterintuitive. You're right. If in fact the free lanes or the tolled lanes have a low toll, that means the free lanes are moving freely because people aren't opting out. It's when the toll is very high is when you're going to find congestion in the free lanes because the way it works is you keep in the hot lanes, you guarantee in most cases in Virginia, a 55-mile movement of traffic. As that decreases by people going in it, the toll goes up. And so it's really about freeing up capacity in the free lanes. That's really what it's about. This is not about getting money. I know people want to say that, but it's really designed to make the free lanes move more.
Plus, it's paying for the hot lanes.
Paying for the hot lanes.
I mean, it's simple math.
John,
See,
you're right.
That's got to be the future. See, that's why I, as a Hampton Roads resident, love the Jordan Bridge because it's an alternative way to get from Portsmouth to Chesapeake, but I've got other alternatives, so I don't have to go over that. But if I do, I'm going to pay the toll, and I make that choice. And sometimes it's like, that'll save me a half hour. I'll take it. I'll pay the $2.
John, you start.
My choice.
There's no way we're going to be able to do these major billion-dollar projects without tolls.
Okay, I got a question here. Peter in, looks like Chesapeake says, would you please ask the secretary why road projects have unraveled in disasters for folks in Hampton Roads? For instance, he says, why has the 460 project been stopped, but we still need that? And why can't we have that back, that expansion back?
Well, 460 was a project that began in the previous administration, and the basic issue there was the inability to get a permit. One of the things I've found in being the Secretary of Transportation is really an engineering issues. really what it's been is the understanding of the allocation of resources and the assessment of risk. The Army Corps of Engineers, we found when we came in, had made it clear there was not going to be a permit given on that road, even though the contractor had been paid actually over $100 million. That's why we had to stop it. What we did is reconfigured the road. We got a permit.
Right.
But when you look at our new smart scale and compare it to other needs in the Commonwealth, that road didn't stack up. So that's the issue. It's not that it's not a good road, but compared to our limited resources,
so you got to make decisions.
Got to make decisions.
We're going to make decisions, and it sounds like you made the right one. Okay, this is from Adam in Chesapeake. Apparently, you mentioned that the high-rise bridge might be tolled. Everybody is freaking out. Please ask the secretary if he intends to toll, as if it's your sole decision, if he intends to toll the new high-rise bridge in Chesapeake.
The current free lanes on that bridge will remain free. The new expanded lanes, and right now it's anticipated to be one in each direction, will be a variable-based toll.
Variable-based.
Hot lane.
So as traffic goes up, the toll amount
right.
goes up, just like you do in going in and out of Washington.
That's right.
DC.
So it will be, but the current free lanes that you're using now will not be tolled. In fact, we passed the law, so only the new capacity will be tolled during, and that's your decision.
Right. So again, if you want to take advantage, It's kind of like, I guess, the Dominion Bridge, the new Dominion Bridge down there, which
that one's tolled.
Great Neck. That's tolled both ways.
Both ways, all the time. This, with the high rise, only the new capacity will have a toll.
But even that Dominion Bridge on 17, again, if you don't want to pay the toll, you can take Battlefield Boulevard, and you can go through the traffic light. That's your choice. And then you can pick 17 up there.
That's correct.
But the other thing that bridge has done is it's opened up that whole corridor for development, manufacturing, jobs.
Which is why we build roads.
This is what people don't realize, right?
And that's going to be, working with North Carolina, the future interstate. That's what they want to bring coming up from North Carolina. Dominion Boulevard, limited access, goes right into that.
It's like, so from Elizabeth City is what you do.
That's right. In other words, North Carolina's approached us, and they want to make their road coming up to Dominion Boulevard interstate quality, which would be another option. That'd be great. So, yep. Ties right into that.
Right now, the Secretary of Transportation, Republican in a Democratic administration, Aubrey Layne, is with us. I think there's a very high chance that Aubrey Layne will remain the Secretary of Transportation if he so chooses, regardless of who the next administration may be, whether it be one of the 4 Republican candidates or Ralph Northam. Now, probably you'll get fired if Tom Perriello wins, right? You got no shot at that. But the other 5, you probably got a good shot of staying.
That's not my decision. We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Well, if you do have the opportunity to stay, would you consider it?
Look, it's been a great honor serving on Governor McAuliffe. Certainly, you'd consider that when any governor asks you to do something. But again, I want to point out that's a long ways away, John, and that's really up to the governor-elect at that time.
All right. Well, I think you ought to stay, Secretary Layne. You're doing a good job. Chairman Villanueva's with us, but he's on his iPhone doing something there because he's the chairman of the Transportation Committee, so he's got a lot going on. Also joining us now from the Democratic side is House of Delegates member from Roanoke, Sam Rasool. Sam, good to have you with us.
Good to be with you.
Delegate Rasool, I just got to get to this. Let's talk about transportation, Roanoke area. Big thing is Amtrak finally getting there. Tell us about that, the impact you think it's going to have on your region.
Well, what we found is that the connector bus that's currently in place from Roanoke to Lynchburg is doing extremely well. People are super excited to finally have Amtrak that can go from Roanoke all the way up to Boston. And we'll be able to connect to D.C. pretty quickly. So it's not only great for the leisurely traveler, but I think the business travelers are going to be excited about the new connection there. And I will kind of second what you were saying. We certainly, he has a tough job. Secretary Layne is doing a fine job. We believe he's been treating the process very, very fairly with regards to transportation means.
Well, look, this is a nonpartisan position, and roads and transportation infrastructure in Virginia, a big deal. So when do you actually get this service? When does it start?
Well, they're constructing the platform as we speak, actually just breaking ground now, and hopefully by the end of the year, we hope to begin service in Roanoke, and hope to, schedule permitting, be on that inaugural train.
So that'll be the end of the line, or the beginning of the line. So you'll be able to go from Roanoke to
Boston.
Where? To Boston.
All the way to Boston. But what happens is, and Sam makes a great point here, we've had in place a bus bridge for the last year or year and a half, and that has proven that there's ridership. Now, to extend the line further, that'll be what happened. The New River Valley and others are also looking for extended service.
Radford, or
all throughout through there.
Right.
And so that's how we've done our incremental approach and prove that the service was there. And
because of the Amtrak bus ridership.
Right, that's exactly
so you've
right.
got people going from taking the Amtrak connector bus from Roanoke to Lynchburg to then get north, and that's been a steady volume. So it says, look, we need to extend this service down.
Yes, because it's all market based. And I think that's one of the things we've tried to bring to transportation is let's make sure the demand is there. That's where we spend our monies, and this has been the great incremental approach, and the Southwest community has really just overwhelmingly supported it.
Yeah, well, it's pretty exciting for us. So we've got a couple of big projects going on, and there's a lot of good economic development happening in the Roanoke New River Valley. So we'll just keep building on that.
Look, I think I'm for extending rail, and I think it's a great idea to the way you're doing it incrementally. And I've just shared this. I used to work at the Daytona Beach News Journal back in the day, and there is a congressman that just got defeated. Congressman Micah was chairman of the Transportation Committee for the Republicans, and he's been a thorn in my side for a quarter century. I fought him in Daytona. He got to be transported. All he tried to do every term up there was find ways to defund Amtrak, pull the funding, privatize it, sell it off. And the guy was a thorn in my side for 30 years. And so I had two celebrations November 8th in New York. One was Trump. The other was Micah finally getting defeated, getting the hell out of my hair, as that guy had to go. So I was so glad to see that. But just stick with Norfolk Amtrak for 1 second. When it started in Norfolk, the service was 5 a.m., which made a lot of sense for business travelers, Pentagon members, military, because you could get to D.C. at 8:50, go about there before 9, do your business. Then the senior citizens of Norfolk whined and cried and complained and said they couldn't get up that early to go up there and see the trees change or whatever they do and go have a lunch. And so they whined to Mayor Frame, and he did a petition, and they moved it to 6 o'clock a.m., right, one departure day, which eliminates the option for the business military traveler. Dumb move that Frame made. He bowed to pressure. Now, Kenny Alexander's in there and says, yeah, I want to change it back. But what you're saying is it isn't that easy.
Yes, that's right. The service really did start at 5, and it really was great for the business traveler. Pentagon get up there in time for the business day. People have to remember that all these trains were run on private railroads. In this particular case, Norfolk Southern CSX connections up there. Freight drives the railroad. And so what happens is when this was moved back, it actually all the freight schedules had to be changed, all the other passenger train schedules for the connections. So what's happened is it's proven not to be as an effective a service. So to move it back, that process could be started, but it's just not going to happen overnight because you got to go through that, working with the freight railroads, working with Amtrak, and changing all those schedules.
But
again.
Mayor Alexander, he's got to start that, right? He's got to start the process.
It would come through the process. That's right, because it's driven by the demand, and that would be there in Norfolk.
All right, so we'll have to get on that. Let's get back to House of Delegates member from Roanoke, Sam Rasool. By the way, Sam Rasool defeated. When did you first get elected? 15?
Special election in the beginning of 14.
And you got 75%, right?
A little over 7.
And the Republicans spent like $800,000 to beat you and got 25%, right?
Not quite that much.
$500,000 is a lot of money.
Spent a lot of money, and
you're running against a Republican that was a sheriff or something.
Yes, there was a
African American lady.
Yeah,
you got 75%. Worst $500,000 that Speaker Howell ever spent ever. Talk about just throwing money down the drain. How do you spend $500,000 and then get 25%? That's pretty bad. So let's stick with transportation here. Roanoke, 81. Anybody ever try to drive that?
Yeah.
In like high volume, I mean, you can't get from point A to point B.
It's pretty tough, and I feel like CTB has tried to do a good job of balancing several variables, because obviously we don't have the congestion that Northern Virginia has, but when we're talking about reliability and safety, economic development, all those things have to come together. One thing that is up right now is this conversation around, which we know is a couple of decades down the road, but the conversation is kind of beginning right now, is around I-73. I-73, which connects down, I think, South Carolina all the way up to Michigan. It's a I-73, 74, 75 corridor that U.S. senators are pushing. Well, we're wanting to redivert some funds that have been going in one direction, potentially to start building for this I-73 corridor through Virginia, which would be, I think, critical in the long run for us.
Yeah, quite frankly, the real challenges in 81 and in 73 is funding. In fact, Interstate 81 has a state law that says it cannot be tolled. Not that we want to toll it anyway, but this would be billions of dollars worth of infrastructure needed. The only way we've been able to do that on Interstate 66 or 64 down in Hampton Roads is going to be through the use of having tolls. And that's what the challenge is in terms of 81 or a new Interstate 73. Unless there is a big push by the federal authorities in terms of putting new monies in, there just isn't the ability to raise the state doesn't have the revenues. This year, we had $1 billion to allocate under Smart Scale. We had $9.2 billion in requests. And this would be a couple $1 billion project.
Not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
Well, I'm excited about President Trump's talk about a transportation
$1.1
package.
trillion infrastructure plan.
Well, we know the bridges and roads are falling apart all across this country, and I think that'd be a wise investment to make sure that we can continue growing the way we need to.
Rather spend that money here in Virginia on our interstate highways, tunnels, and bridges than in the Middle East, I can tell you that. I got all these texts here. Let's see. Larry in Richmond says the secretary realizes that Virginia reached beyond Roanoke. I-81 needs additional lanes, and the primary routes are not to current standards. Where do they rank? I think you just answered that.
Yeah, I mean,
not good.
It's not good. Although we do have a plan. We've worked with the legislators on 81, and there are spot improvements being done for additional passing lanes for up and inclines, because there's a lot of elevation change on 81. So we're working on it, but the big money is just not available right now.
Okay.
And there may be some, if we ever figure out this, there's been talk for many years about an intermodal facility on 81, and that may provide a little bit of alleviation there. If we had an intermodal facility where we had more on our train tracks as opposed to trucks going up and down the road. I mean, that's really primarily when we're talking about reliability where we have a lot of problems.
Pam in Norfolk says, ask Secretary Layne to talk about HRBT versus the third crossing.
Sure. HRBT, the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, is what was the preferred alternative selected, first time in many decades, unanimous by the Hampton Roads Transportation Authority down there. That is in the current right-of-way. The Army Corps of Engineers has said that can be permitted. The third crossing, where we extend 564 over through Craney Island, we just had a meeting with the Navy and the Army Corps of Engineers. That's going to take some more development because Craney Island is also critical to the Navy and its fuel operations going forward. So where we stand now is the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel will be next. We'll begin that procurement sometime probably at the end of this year, working with the locals down there. We continue to develop the third crossing, but that's going to be sometime in the future.
Okay, so Georgia Newport News says, I'm really upset. Why did we let a foreign company come in and construct these tunnels in the Hampton Roads area and then toll them, and they're not a United States company and they get the money and then ship the profits overseas.
Well, one of the things
he's talking about
that
the Elizabeth River crossing.
Yeah, and what we've done, and this happened our second year in, is a total reformation of the Public-Private Partnership Act. In fact, the state had never before identified what it would cost us to build it before we actually started negotiating with these other third parties. So that's all changed now. And so now, if we choose a third party, it has to be compared to what it would cost the state. And I have to, as Secretary of Transportation, certify that it's in the best interest, not just the public use, but in the best interest. So from this point forward, it really doesn't matter to us as long as it's in the public interest. It's the least expensive, and that's what these reforms will do. But I certainly agree, in this particular case, all the upside in this contract does go to the concessionaire of the, and that it was not actually proven against. In fact, I have said publicly, and the governor has, we could have done that deal ourselves. As it turned out, there was no need to bring another partner in, but we just didn't evaluate the programs that way.
Yeah, we got screwed.
We got a contract that is not in the best interest of the Commonwealth.
Yeah, we got screwed. So we're talking about, as you go forward, is building additional lanes with tolling, is that really going to be the future?
Well, again, we passed legislation saying that you can no longer put tolls on the road unless there is a free alternative. So, yes, in terms of us to do these major billion-dollar projects, there's going to have another revenue source. And by the way, we're talking about President Trump's plan. This revolves around that. I mean, his infrastructure plan is all about
1.1 trillion.
Yeah, but it's talking about other revenue sources, tolls, giving tax credits. Well, I think that's going to be a very small need, as Delegate Roll has pointed out, that most of the projects in the Commonwealth and the country are not applicable for tolling. We need to redo things and not add capacity, and that's not going to lend itself to tolling. But when there is capacity added, the only way that we're going to be able to afford this in the Commonwealth is to look at another revenue source, and that's going to be tolls.
That's going to be the bottom line. I mean, there's got to be a revenue source here.
Unless there is some major influx of monies coming from the federal government, I don't see any of that. If you read any of President Trump's plans, it doesn't envision that. It envisions expansion of public-private partnerships.
Well, with $20 trillion of debt, I mean, he's not going to be able to get he's not going to get a $5 trillion plan through. It just isn't going to happen. It's too much money. So that's what you got. I mean, you got to have some revenue source in order to get the money in. And I don't particularly like private-public partnerships because there's all kind of shenanigans that go on. But you look, if somebody's going to engage in that, they're going to want a return on their dollar.
Sure. I mean, it's and so what we have to make sure at the state is that return, because think about this, John. We're really talking about who's going to finance the project. Nobody can finance a project any cheaper than the Commonwealth of Virginia. And if it chooses to, we have AAA credit rating, tax-exempt status. So we should always compare what it would cost us to bring it in a third party.
That makes sense.
And that's what we do now. So that doesn't mean we're not going to have other third parties, but it means they got to beat our terms.
Yeah.
And in 66, they did.
Right.
And I can stand up and say, you know what? I'm comfortable saying this is in the best interest of the Commonwealth because they have better terms than we do.
All right, Sam, how many seats are the Democrats going to win in November in the House?
I don't think it'll be too much. I think the problem is that the party is in the wilderness right now, and the Democratic Party, as a proud Democrat speaking, we have a lot of work to do to figure out what we stand for, what our values are moving forward. We're the party of the working man, party of the people, but the people aren't feeling it right now, so we've got a lot of work to do.
You know what your biggest risk is? President Trump's meeting with secondary union leaders in the White House 3 weeks ago. He had about 30 of them in there. These were union leaders. These are not the guys that are head of the AFL-CIO or the Teamsters that make $5 million and live in Palm Springs mansions. These are lower-level union leaders, pipe fitters, mechanics, welders, steel workers, carpenters. and he had about 30 of them in the White House. It was a very enthusiastic meeting, and the Democrats have not nationally, and I think on a global scale, they have not figured this out. And I think until you guys do that, you've lost that wing. And you look at that meeting and the enthusiasm of those union leaders, second-tier union leaders whose members voted for Trump in order to get their jobs back, in order to get pay higher. I mean, protests with pink hats are not going to address that.
Well, there's a lot of energy out there, and I think that energy needs to be channeled correctly. But you're exactly right in the sense that we have to be a party that stands for something, and we've got to be clear about what our values are. And one big thing that I really disagree with is really the identity politics that we've been playing for too long. I mean, pandering to all these different groups. Let's celebrate our diversity. Let's organize by our diversity. But when we advocate, we should be advocating around our American values. That's the only thing that really matters. And my party hasn't figured that out.
Why?
I think that it's all a short-term game, right? We need to figure out how to build the coalitions to win votes each election. And in Virginia, we have an election every year. And so when we're only worried about short-term gain, instead of, as a business guy myself, when I'm trying to build a business, I'm talking about what's going to be the long-term plan here. And when we're playing from one quarter to another, when we're playing from one election to another, we're not building a sustainable plan. And now the American people have caught up to it, and they're fed up with it. So I know there are a lot of Democrats on the ground that want something different, and I want to be a part of something that offers something genuinely different than the upper echelon that's kind of stuck in their echo chamber.
Sam, you are counter trend. I mean, I think you're spot on. And as a Trump supporter, I hope you don't figure this out until 2020. I don't think you will, because you're going to be in the minority. But I mean, that really is spot on. And the identity politics is like crack. It's easy. It's short term. It's right now. It's the path of least resistance to win elections in certain areas. That just didn't pan out for them in 2016 on a national basis. But I think it's the easy thing to do. The harder thing to do is what you've done, which is resign from your caucus leadership and say you think your party should go in another direction, but it's longer term.
Yeah, it really is. And this is, by the way, people can't see me, but as a brown kid from Southwest Virginia, I'm one of those identities in many different ways. And what I'm saying is, don't defend me.
Right.
Defend the Constitution. Defend the liberties that are enshrined to us. And I think once we begin to figure that out, by the way, on both sides need to figure that out, but I'm focused on my party. Once we begin to figure that out, then we can grow as a nation.
Well, the easier thing for you to do is just come over to our side, become a Republican. That's what we told Joe Manchin to do, and then everybody wins.
I think I'm not a centrist. I'm pretty liberal, but with a lot of libertarian bends to me. I think that's a lot of millennials. But you know what? There are a lot of great Republicans like my buddy Ron over here. And so I look forward to working with people from all backgrounds as we try to figure this thing out as we move forward.
All right, Sam Rasul showing Ronnie Villanueva the love. We're done for this segment. Aubrey Layne, Transportation Secretary, Virginia. We want him to keep building them roads. Oh, we didn't get to talk about light rail. We'll have to do that the next time, and my phone line can blow up. We'll be right back.